want to say an opening prayer?
Sure. Thank you, Father, for the promise of peace and rest on this Shabbat. And Lord, guide Jim as he teaches, and may you know him by your Spirit. May he speak words of truth and wisdom, Lord, and may we grow in your grace and wisdom and knowledge and understanding in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Well, I was kind of hoping I'd see somebody from the Motley Crew here, but I guess they...
What? What about me?
No. The ones that were up front this morning. I said, okay. The title of this is The City That Won't Go Away, really. I said Second City. I was talking about Chicago, you know. No. Anyway.
That would be a different teaching, yes,
Yeah.
entirely.
Anyway, what I want to share is mostly history today with some scripture, okay? I will leave you with some questions. And I'm talking about history primarily, it's ancient history. But I want to bring it up to date. The most discussed city in the entire Bible is Jerusalem. Okay, open up a concordance, you can see that. But if you count and take a look around, the second most mentioned city is not Nazareth or Bethlehem or Rome or Damascus or anything else. In second place is Babylon, solidly. Its name is spread across all the history in the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation. Besides the first and last books, it shows up in 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Psalms, Isaiah, Jeremiah a lot, Ezekiel, Daniel of course, Micah, Zechariah, Matthew, Acts, and 1 Peter. I think the Spirit of God is saying something to us. The amount of attention given to this place is considerable, high, but until recently, very little was taught about it. Jerusalem is still with us, of course, and if it is the city of God, then Babylon is the city of man, built for man's glory. Jericho and Damascus are probably the two oldest and continuously inhabited cities, but Babylon is older, and Ur even preceded it. These places are old, they go way back. The name is the Greek form of Babel. Babel is composed of two words, Ba, meaning gate, and El, of course, meaning God. Hence the phrase gate to God, or gate to gods, the plural generally used. The empire faded over time, but the belief system that characterized it persisted for centuries. Some historians of ancient cultures say that it is the source of all pagan religion, period. Austin Layard, a renowned archaeologist in the early years of archaeology, said, quote, "We have the united testimony of sacred and profane history that idolatry originated in the area of Babylonia, the most ancient of religious systems." I'm including in this the city of Ur, okay, birthplace of Abraham, because it was all Babylon. Herodotus, the ancient Greek scholar, wrote how it surpasses in splendor any city in the known world. He claimed to have witnessed the rites of its mystery religion in other countries, in several countries, and he tells how Babylon was the source from which all systems of idolatry spread. It's a bad place. For me, those two identifiers sum up the image I have of the place even today, okay? It's the splendor of it, the beauty, covering up the evil of its rebellious idolatry. The place has a strange fascination to it compared to other ancient cities, and there seems to be a spirit with it that's kind of contagious, and the name shows up today. There's jewelry, fashion designs, a couple of movies, TV programs, Babylon 5. We never hear those other ancient cities mentioned in these contexts ever. I even saw one ad for a Babylon beer. I mean, it's all over the place. It won't go away. Today, the province where Babylon is part of, the ruins, is called Babel, the original name in the book of Genesis. They retain the name. You can see it for yourself if you call up Google Earth application and you key in Ishtargate, Iraq. It will fly you right to the spot. I've got some pictures here to pass around. Give you an idea. If you do that, you'll know what you're looking for. I am told the earliest language used in what's quoted in the Bible, apparently, is not Akkadian or any of those. It was something called Paleo-Hebrew. Okay? People that follow this stuff tell me that. If that's accurate, and I think it is, then the first names in the Bible were of that language, obviously. It follows then that the name used today for that area, Babel, is correct because that was its original name. Since the name used today for the area is Babel, that means that the people who control the land today are retaining a Hebrew label out of a Jewish book to identify a special place in history. I don't know if they realize they're doing it. But I want to take a look at this city that today. It's not a mounded tell. A lot of ancient cities have tells. They are attacked and destroyed, and they build on top of it and turn into a big mound. Jericho's like that. And a few other places. But this place is flat. They didn't have to dig deep. It's not built up layer on top of layer. Turn this thing on. Got a slide. I copied this, a photograph I took at the University of Chicago about 4 years ago at their Oriental Museum. This is a plan of discovered Babylon back in the 1930s, updated slightly, but much of the area has been ruined, so it was a good thing they did it when they did it. This is north. This is the main entrance, Ishtar Gate. This is the palace of Nebuchadnezzar, the site of the original tower, the temple of Marduk, the state god, the main god of Babylon for most of its time, especially during Nebuchadnezzar's period. This is the river Euphrates running right through the middle. They didn't have to dig wells. They had channels off that for canals. The streets, most of them were all at right angles. The city was way ahead of its time. A triple gate, triple wall, I should say, surrounds this entire city. Some estimates were as high as 60 to 80 feet. The place was enormous. This is several acres alone. This palace complex. One of the gates, or one of the walls, excuse me, at the top served as a highway, almost. Essentially, actually. It could handle 4 horse chariots that allowed them to turn a certain way. 8 other gates opened up into the outlying areas into the countryside. Iron gratings blocked attacks from outside, right over the river. The main entrance, the Ishtar Gate, has images all over it, and it shows 2 of the competing gods of Babylon. The Ishtar Gate is right here, and such. Let's see. Let me pass something around here. This is a reconstruction of it. The original one is in Berlin. This is what it looks like. The walls, as you can see, were brilliantly colored, molded, and glazed brick relief dragons and bulls. The dragons were the god Marduk, the state god. That's his place. And the storm god Adad. But that was a secondary or tertiary god. But there is something odd about this. And I will show you. This is the image of the various, these are all over Babylon around the Ishtar Gate. This is Marduk, the dragon god, the serpent, and he has legs. Okay? Don't look at it too long. The Babylonian artisans went through the effort to portray these dragons as such with legs. The British evangelist David Hathaway noted that the number of serpent images on the Ishtar Gate is the same number as the numerical value of the word Sheol, Hebrew word Sheol. The number is 337. I had this value verified by somebody in our congregation who knows something about it. He looked at the Hebrew word and he counted up the values of the letters without a chart or without a calculator, and he told me the number was 337. You know who that was?
Yeah, I wonder.
I mean, he didn't have to look at a book or anything. It's amazing. Mr. Hathaway has said that this gate is the very gate to hell on earth, a very strong chart, because of what's on it. These devilish images that match the word hell. The original gate, like I said, sits in the Berlin Museum. It's been there about 100 years. But there is another gate, north of the Sea of Galilee, at the base of a cliff once filled with the images of the Roman god Pan, which is the term Peter Pan. The river cave opening at the bottom of the cliff was considered by the Romans to be the very opening to hell. That's their opinion. But it is the area where Yeshua Jesus declared to his friends in Matthew 16 that the gates, plural, gates of hell will not stand against the kingdom of God. Was he saying that there are several ways to hell? One way to heaven? Several ways to hell? Anyway, the way through the Ishtar Gate into the city is called the processional way. It's famous. It's a long, broad road right down here. Just so it's labeled as such right there. It's hard for me to determine when I look at these photographs how long this thing is, but it's wide enough to hold a couple of trucks. It's wide. It's large enough to hold a large procession or even a parade. Walls on both sides of it. Yeah. In this picture, I forgot to point out something. If you notice on the sides here, this is actually the inside, okay? This is the outside over here. And here's a reproduction of the walls. It shows all these lions, okay? Lined up. That lion is another photograph I took in the University of Chicago. This is what it is. This is not the lion of Judah, this is the lion of Ishtar. Okay? There's 120 of these things lined up across that parade route, minus two that sit at the Oriental Museum in South Chicago. It seems that the major gods had creature images representing them. The populace would have a procession to the main temple once a year on New Year's Day, their New Year's Day. They displayed eggs, greenery, and baby animals, things associated with the spring. You could say that it was their version of a celebration of new life. Ishtar was influential. The influence of Ishtar and other things hang on until today. That's over 2,500 years. In my hometown, up until I was about 8 or 9 years old, we'd have an annual Ishtar parade. Every year. You could join in. There's no restrictions. Jump in the back. People would dress up. Kids would bring little baskets of goodies and march in the Easter parade. There was even a song they would play. You probably remember it. Your Easter bonnet with all the frills upon it.
Sure.
I'll be the proudest fellow.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was usually a band playing nice songs. The parades are gone, but we still have Easter egg hunts for the children. 2,500 years, 3,000 years later. Besides the astronomical knowledge they accumulated, the Babylonians devised a number system with a base of 60 instead of the 10 system we grew up in, which is the basis of our metric. 60. Yeah, I used to wonder when I was a kid why the circle was composed of 360 divisions instead of something sensible like metric based, 100 or 200 or something, Well, that was the number of days in their ancient calendar. The Babylonians saw the year as a cycle. Okay? Other cultures at that time apparently used the same system. They also divided the months into 30 days, the days into 24 hours, and the hours into 60 minutes. All these time values are divisible by the number 6. So anyway, just past the Ishtar Gate, I pointed it out before, is Neb's palace. enormous place. It was an impressive complex. It's only a small portion, as you can see, of the city, though. The city measures about, actually the wall is up right here. This is about 2 miles, and that's about 1.5 miles. Quite a few square miles. Parked almost in the middle of the Marduk Temple area, show you that, and the site of the famous tower. So I want to take a look and go back again and review what we've all read before to get the words right. I gave someone Genesis 11, 3 to 9.
And they said one to another, Go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach into heaven. And let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men build. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build a city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth. And from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth.
Thanks. Hence the word babbling, we still use it today. That tower became a focal point, in my opinion, of flagrant disobedience. The Lord had instructed these descendants of Noah to multiply and fill the whole earth. From the text, it seems that they purposely set out to do just the opposite and congregate in one area in order to make a name for themselves. Yes, let's make a name for ourselves. Let's allow pride to take over and dominate reason and common sense and decency. Let's make a name for ourselves and leave a legacy of bondage through sin via idolatry. And then we'll yield ourselves over to the rule of one man, Nimrod. The Lord directs the confusion of language, which forces them to scatter. Some must have returned because the city did get built. We all know that. But he must have had reasons for them to scatter. What I want to do now is tell you what I suspect is one of the reasons. God knew then, as we know now, that when power is concentrated under the control of one person or group with no legal protections, the result is tyranny every time. Strong centralized control restricts individual freedom and enables perverse behavior among the elite at the top due to a lack of accountability. The demands of the general population by the elite, over time, become increasingly unreasonable. In the Bible, dominant empires are often shown as predatory beasts. Powerful governments consume production, money, and people in the process of retaining control. One world government is an invitation to a new Babel, with no competition and no alternatives. Doors can open to new and more potent versions of pagan idolatry, where more glorious towers are erected. Unchecked, it leads to a culture where almost anything goes and life is threatened. Pride is very destructive, both on a national or personal level. The Tower of Babel, the beginning of that city, is more than just a structure to me. It's an insult to our Father, who wants only the best for us. The following might be the main reason he wanted them to scatter. This is a comment from Roy Stedman, who was a a Bible commentator, lived about 10 years ago. Fairly well known and respected, but I think he must have been somewhat controversial. Here's what he said, quote, "Let us make a name for ourselves is a fundamental desire of a fallen race. It reveals one of the basic philosophies of humanism. Glory to man in the highest, for man is the master of things." That is the central thought of humanism. Glory to mankind. The fact that this was a religious tower, but built to make a name for man, reveals the master motive behind religion. It is a means by which man attempts to share in the glory of God. We must understand this, he says. Otherwise, we will never understand the power of religion as it has pervaded the earth and permeated our culture ever since. It is the way by which man seeks to share in what is rightfully God's alone. End quote. These multi-God religious systems in these places in that time, they were the rule, not the exception. We refer to them today as a pantheon of gods. I guess the Greeks had the most. I heard they were in the hundreds. It was either the Greeks or the Egyptians. Is that right?
Right.
Had hundreds of gods. In case you think that these systems, you might think these systems were made up because they were very busy in those days. I want to read something to you. Okay, in a second. This statement, along with the actions of the leadership at the time, shows that these people were serious and that the worship system was real and potent from the very beginning. The statement comes from the father of Nebuchadnezzar. His name was Nabopolassar, and it is very telling. Quote, "At the behest of the gods, Nabu and Marduk, who ordered me to secure the foundations of Babylon on the very heart of the underworld, so that its head can vie with heaven itself, I have bowed my neck and done as I've been commanded." End quote. This inscription is very different. What we usually see from ancient leaders in that time is boasting of the conquest and subjugation of their neighboring nations and the noble rule of their empire and blah, blah, blah. Right? Here in one sentence is complete submission to darkness. This is rebellion, the dynasty of Nimrod, all over again. The man acknowledges a heaven while he ignores the God of all creation. He intends to secure the foundation of the entire city to the underworld. In other words, the foundation will have a foundation, hell. This is not just a religious game used as a means to control the population. Well, I'm sure that was done. This is a strong religion, and it defines an entire empire in a time. And it persisted for centuries in other cultures, like Herodotus says. The Spirit of God says to have no part in this place. Come out of her, people. Can you read the Revelation portion? This is Revelation 18.
And I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive her plagues. For her sins have reached to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Render to her just as she rendered to you, and repay her double according to her works. In the cup which she has mix double for her. In the measure that she glorified herself and lived luxuriously, in the same measure give her torment and sorrow. For she says in her heart, I sit as queen, and I am no widow, and she will not see sorrow. Therefore, her plagues." Oh, sorry, I went too far.
That's right. That portion about the widow is interesting because that's a dig at Israel. In his 5th chapter, Zechariah tells how a place will be readied in the land of Shinar in order to receive a notable image of evil. Rabbis talk about this. That evil is symbolized as a woman who is placed in an earthen container and carried to a special house when it's ready in the land of Shinar by creatures with unclean wings. This woman was not in Shinar, apparently, and went out to other places. Is this woman that's going to Shinar in Zechariah the same one that's in Revelation with Mystery Babylon tattooed on her head? I think so. Shinar is Babylon. Babylon is idolatry. Idolatry is rebellion. Personally, I think lawlessness and rebellion are interchangeable. One or the other. Okay, right about now you might be saying, okay, Jim, we know a lot of this. So what? It's nice, but it's old. It's behind us. Well, I want to answer that other question, if you have this question. Will this ancient rebellion return in our time, after a particular preparation is in place? Zechariah says that it will one day. And the Messiah's revelation to John, he talks about the city that will be destroyed in an hour. And that hasn't happened yet. That means that Babylon will be rebuilt. Nobody goes in and destroys archaeological ruins. Funding from the U.S. State Department was provided several years ago to an international antiquities organization to continue the rebuilding of Babylon after what Saddam Hussein did to it. He practically ruined the area. To the tune of $700,000 just to get something off the ground. UNESCO, the arm of the UN, is spending several million towards the revitalization of Babylon and several other important sites in Iraq, according to a New York Times article from April 2006. And we can dismiss all this, but I don't. Babylon has been ignored and symbolized and allegorized for a long time. Now it is considered important enough to pour so much into for initial cleanup and rejuvenation. Is this being done as a base to control oil? I don't think so. New oil reserves will be discovered all over the world. I think in the next 10 to 15 years they might even find some in Antarctica. They're looking everywhere. So why would anyone care about this remote area of real estate called Shinar? Our State Department has also built a 114-acre complex in the northern part of Shinar, specifically Baghdad, the largest embassy ever built. Why would any nation do these things in a place like that? There's nothing there. It's just an agricultural area. The oil's in the south, the mountains up in the north, where all the mineral wealth's at. Turn this off. There's not much there. If we treat this city as only some kind of a misty, symbolic place that has no identifiable reality to it, then it's easy to deal with. It's a fairy tale. We could relegate the place to something ancient, something ancient and dusty and not all that real, or Shangri-La, if we see it as a place that did exist, but it's nothing more than like images from one of the Hollywood epic movies. And we can dismiss it as a place that once was all right, but we'll never see it again. It's nothing to worry about. That's also easy to live with. But if it's old history, coupled with current events at the original site, shows us that it really hasn't gone away, then the specter of a returning pagan idolatry, disguised with an acceptable, even beautiful covering, is disconcerting. Israel as a nation was usually idealized prior to World War II because only a few people could believe that it would be restored in the last days. I mean, look at the condition they were in. I grew up with the nation in place. It came out before I was an adult. It appeared in a day, and it's alive today. Flourishing, actually. In just a short span of time. It is young among modern nations, but much of the world already has difficulty with it. Babylon also has been described as existing only in a symbolic sense. After seeing how Israel survived a determined effort of elimination, it's not difficult for me now to imagine a silent empire of Babylon being restored, given enough money and support. The place has been dead for centuries, but in our time it's receiving a lot more attention. There is skepticism, though, as to how anything like this could possibly come back from the past. There's a reason why some believe that a literal Babylon in Iraq is just not possible. In Revelation, it states that maritime traders, merchant marine sailors, will mourn when they see the mighty city go down. Since the site isn't anywhere near a large body of water, the point is valid, at least on the surface. They say the scripture describes a revived Rome, not Babylon. But I remember an article I read like 9 or 10 years ago about Alexander the Great. After taking control of Babylon, he started to rebuild some of the temples. He reportedly was so impressed with the city that he was planning to make the capital of his expanding empire. He was also planning to widen the Euphrates River down to the ocean, which is the modern-day Persian Gulf. In order to make the city more accessible, a wider river with the same volume of flow is going to move slower and make it possible for vessels to go upstream, in this case, from the ocean to the city. This extraordinary man never thought small. If the project sounds impossible for that time when they didn't have much technology, remember that people under Cyrus the Great from Persia diverted that mighty river without hydraulic equipment, into a marsh area that was lower, in order to lower temporarily the level of the river and sneak in through a back gate and take it without a battle. The stone cylinder of Cyrus in the British Museum records how he took it without a battle. I think the widening could be accomplished today. And Alexander probably would have done it if he hadn't died so young. The tradition says he died in Nebuchadnezzar's palace. Which makes sense. They always took the best place in town when they took over. That's everything I read. Today, one of the busiest places on earth today for international trade is the Persian Gulf. The area that Persia today, Iran, is threatening to close. It's funny. The Persians want to close it, the Greeks want to keep it open, and nothing changes, right? It seems like. Famous archaeologist from Indiana, we all heard of him, tells how Nebuchadnezzar chided his predecessors for building with sun-baked clay bricks and tar from mortar. Slime in your Bible, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, slime. So it's green slime, right? What he went on to build as he added to the city became something he was really proud of. Okay, we know the story. We have his words in Daniel when he boasts of the magnificent city, right, that he has just built before he's driven out into the country and he becomes something that looks like a sloth. We know that the statue in his dream had a head of gold, but feet of clay and iron. So it was a statue with a glorious head and questionable feet. Right? The image is a time span of human empires that were directed by the head, just like any other body. Rabbi also talks about that in See the series. Babylon did glow with wealth and military power for much of its history, but much of the city was made of clay bricks, and many didn't stand at the time. The ones that were exposed to the weather, they weathered away, the mud. Yeah. The important, well-made structures, they were stolen by German and British archaeologists in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. And they were removed to their respective museums in the respective capitals, and they're still there. They left all the mud behind. The Turks of the Ottoman Empire took many of the surviving bricks with Nebuchadnezzar's name on it and used some of them to build dams. I'm sure the scientists are really happy about that. Today, a New York Times writer has called the city, he visited the place and wrote an article, he calls this place the City of Mud with a $1 million name. It has been used in $1 million movies. But that's the present. The future is even more intriguing. For me, the War of the Seeds series was gratifying to listen to. I have a personal reason for that, because I thought about these things, but I never could meet anybody that when I was living in Texas and just moved here, that agreed with me until I saw that. Especially what's on disc 10. I don't think that biblical prophecy personally was ever centered on Europe. When Babylon is rebuilt, it will probably be a formed stone. Today, if we mix certain common minerals from the earth in a water reaction, we add steel rods to it, we get reinforced concrete. I'm going to go out on a limb here a little bit. Bear with me. Rome, the city of 7 hills, known for its legal framework and strong military, was the iron in the legs of the statue, right? Iron is not as rare and beautiful as gold or silver, but it is very strong. Scripture does give us, I think, some really interesting images. Rome and Babylon were different cultures at different times, and they wouldn't mix well. But the final result, or final empire, could be a blend. I doubt that Rome owns the prophecy and revelation in Daniel. We could debate this. We could debate, is it going to be one or the other? Is it going to be London or New York or Las Vegas? Is the clay mixed with iron into a new image? The confluence of two cultures using things from each? Is the spirit of Babylon returning to where it comes from, like it says in Zechariah, in order to mesh its idolatry with the proven, well-defined structure of Rome? It sure looks like it. I don't know. Maybe the feet of clay don't seem to be so weak after all. Still, none of the gates, the walls, or anything else of that city will stand up firmly against the rock that's coming against it. God's patience is not infinite with evil. Our Father keeps his promises. The power of the words that created the entire universe will come unrestrained to take down that city and everything that it stands for. There will be jubilation in heaven and mourning on earth. In the meantime, in our time, unfortunately, the world still loves the kind of superficial beauty and gaudiness and power of a Babylon that comes in any form. It's unfortunate. The fascination with a set-apart place of ease and plenty, with minimum accountability, all protected with a strong military, and that persists through generations. It can be embraced by any culture that is willing to tolerate the reduced liberty and increased taxation that's needed to support it. Babylon is the kind of city that much of the world loves, whether it's made of clay, iron, or steel. So what belief system covers the land of Shinar today? Is it Marduk the dragon god? Shamash the sun god? No, it's definitely something else. It's Nana from Ur. Okay? It's Ur the Chaldees, the birthplace of Abraham. And even today it's contending with Abraham's children. It has gold, and it uses something the ancient people did not have: global communication. And that's where I'm going to end right now, to be continued later on a spin-off or something like that. Are there any questions?
I didn't get that Nana. What is that Nana?
Nana's the moon god.
It's the moon god.
Same as all. The same as all, it's
It
Muslim.
has different
Islam.
names. It's got 3 or 4 names.
Yeah, it is Islam. The whole area is Islamic now.
So Abraham comes from Ur. He leaves the city of idols. They don't tell you what idols they are. But archaeologists have definitely, secular archaeologists have definitely pinned it down. It was the city of the moon god. And what was the first city they conquered when they came back into the promised land? It was Jericho, which means the city of the moon god. Anyway, that's all I got. You got any other questions?
I just want to make a comment, the feet of iron and clay, I think it's Joel Richardson that talks about, in Aramaic, the word for mixed is Arab. And
Oh, yeah.
And see, when they left and they moved,
Yeah.
Esau, and when they left and they intermarried with the tribes, nomad tribes, they became what they called a mixed race, so the word for it is Arab.
I just want to shoot it past around there.
Yeah.
This is what Babylon's area, the area around Nebuchadnezzar's palace, used to look like before Saddam Hussein got his hands on it and ruined it. And it shows the typical size, it gives you an idea of the enormity of that city. It was for an ancient city, it was enormous.
I'm glad you included that quote by Nebuchadnezzar's father. That just, when I read that, it blew me away.
Yeah, I'd like to live in a city that was founded on hell.
And now it's in Berlin.
Like I said, we're done. No other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to say a quick prayer. Okay. Thank you, Father, for all the good things you give us, the precious things in your word, and for the Jewish people who have left us so much because of their wonderful legacy and heritage. We thank you for your words and for all there is to learn. Help us to learn it well and share it when the time is right.